Any questions about the webinar? I know we just kind of gave it a few days ago.
Oh wait, hold on.
Did we do an introduction to autonomous systems?
I don't remember, but I read there's only 3 pages.
It's an interesting camera mount.
Oh yeah. Daniela came up with it.
That is like worth a fortune right there.
The only thing
Innovation.
Yeah, really.
is how it's strong.
Creativity.
I can show you.
Oh, okay, thanks. I think we did. I just didn't show you.
This is it.
Yes, Anisha, what's up?
That's a little bit. It's like, I did what
Sure. Stability. That was actually my first question I was going to throw out there. Like, can anyone explain how the sacroiliac joint gets its stability from, or where it gets its stability from? Where's the first thing it might get its stability from? Anyone have any ideas? Not form or force closure. Something else about the sacroiliac joint that helps generate some stability. I did talk about it. Maybe I didn't talk about it enough. I think I did talk about it a decent amount, though.
Wait, you mean like the stabilizing?
Just kind of like a passive means to get the sacroiliac joint to stay stable.
You think of ligaments?
There are ligaments, yes. There's another situation. I knew you guys were going to think of ligaments. So there's another little reason why this SI joint.
Structurally, you're saying?
Sort of. Definitely structure.
Sacral
No, that's definitely not it.
It's not lumbar. The promontory?
Oh, the promontory. Oh, it's right here. Well, actually, it's not.
Yeah.
So it's just the very anterior part of S1.
Orientation?
Orientation, not so much.
Shape?
Shape, yeah, a little bit. Go in.
Auricular process.
Yes, what about those surfaces?
Ears.
They are the ears. Yeah, all right.
Oh, there's two, isn't there?
Well, we have the facet joints in the spine are nice and smooth, aren't they? They're smooth and flat. What about, yes.
Rough.
The first way it gets it from is that it's rough. And it actually starts out pretty smooth, but through life you will get rougher and rougher and rougher, and it will lock together like two pieces of sandpaper rubbing against one another. So that's the first step. We have those rough surfaces interlocking with one another. The second step is form and force closure, kind of. So the shape, the architecture. Oh. So here's the sacrum, this blue square thing right over there. Even though it's a triangle, they should have made it a triangle when they drew their picture. Right to them. And then we have the innominate, the right-hand side, left-hand side, and we have them over here chilling out. Man, this is awesome. So same situation. Here. Oh. Talk about stable. So we have this triangular shaped bone just getting wedged right in between these two massive bones right over here. You kind of have to imagine the ligaments helping hold everything together, but everything just kind of forces itself together. It forces itself into stability from body weight to the weight of the leg, the ground reaction force coming up from the floor. Everything just kind of sandwiches itself together, and this is almost looks like a mortise kind of action going on, like it had the talocrural joint. Kind of have this nice mortise with a whole lot of force pushing it and stabilizing it into that position, and that is all just based off of the shape of everything. So the shape of everything with the natural forces that pass through there, that helps generate stability. Next part is we of course have our favorites, muscles, and muscles will absolutely help out stabilizing this joint. You will have like glute med over here trying to help stabilize and push the pelvis together. Like I was saying in the muscle presentation, transversus abdominis has been shown to improve the stability of this joint as well. The forces again coming up from the floor and then coming from the body, all working to stabilize. And there's probably some other muscles down here that no one has quite figured out what they're doing, but all help to kind of just muscle and squish everything together. So it's forcing the three bones to come together by a whole lot of muscles, a whole lot of just ground reaction force, and a whole lot of body weight going through the situation. So that's how it really generates stability. And also then, the ligaments certainly play a role in that as well. And I guarantee you, the guys after me will talk about form and force closure, and hopefully you guys remember it between now and then, otherwise I'm going to, like, I don't know. But so memorize that. It's going to come up later, I guarantee you.
Would form and force closure be more important than the rough surfaces for passive?
I think overall, like the most important ones are probably the form and force closure. Like you could have all the rough surfaces in the world, but if they didn't have this nice architecture going for itself, that amount of force would just cause them to shear right off one another. So I definitely think the way you put it is that this is probably the most important. Secondary is that all the muscles are working together. And then you have from like within, right in here, you have a big coefficient of friction, just really preventing everything from slipping and sliding around. So if you had to present an order, I suppose that would be a good order to present it in, with the ligaments, maybe even like being above the rough surfaces. But everyone forgets about the rough surfaces. I'm pretty sure they're going to ask you about them. So it'll probably be like this, 1, 2, ligaments 3, and then 4 will be the rough surfaces. But I just made that up, so it's not like verified by anyone. So don't go like, oh, well, he said it was number 4. And they'll be like, what are you talking about? So that would be how I would expect it to turn out in the study. Next question. That was a good one. SI joint is crazy to treat. Did it sound okay when you guys kind of came off of that presentation and be like, all right, I have a basic understanding of this joint. All right, good. So that was the overall goal, because that is where people start to get confused, as they get a whole bunch of SI stuff thrown at them. It's very confusing, and then from there on out, it's just, they're confused for like the next 6 years in their career. So it's good to just get one that you walk away from being like, yeah, that kind of made sense. Any other questions about it? About it. You guys understood this whole process thing right over here? The stream of like kind of trying to put everything together, tie it together to make sense rather than just be a whole bunch of anatomy and movements. Like the whole, when does it counter-nutate, when does it nutate? Did you guys pick up on that one or no? Yeah, we got some positives. Anyone want to summarize it for me? Yeah?
Nutation is when it's locked. You want nutation. Counter-nutation is something you would ideally want to avoid, right? Or it's not as stable.
Yeah, if you're doing something functional, if you're playing a sport, vacuuming the floor, doing whatever, you would want an unstable SI joint. Even though it wiggles around like 8 degrees, you would not want to be having a loose sacroiliac joint while you're doing that. Because I can guarantee you, it will hurt like there's no tomorrow, and your patients are going to just constantly tell you about it. So nutated is going to be locked, it's going to be really stable. Counter-nutated is going to be a little unstable. And then from there, the confusion level ramps up considerably when you start trying to like stand on one leg and palpate things moving around. That is for the future. So yeah, that was a good summary. So when does it counter-nutated though? There's like a specific time when it might be counter-nutated. And
During sleep?
yep, while you're resting, while you're lying down, apparently that's when it really just kind of unlocks, just to kind of unwind, like taking stress off of the discs. And then when you try to stand up, what is it supposed to do? Does it like fully nutate all the way? Does it like stay in counter nutation? What happens when you start just getting up from supine to sitting and just kind of like standing up? What happens?
Moves into nutation.
How much though? Yeah. So we have slight nutation. Full-on nutation is when you start moving around, like when you're bending forward, you really want it to lock into place. Like your brain is like, hey, everybody, we're going forwards, and then you start to initiate that process. You would want the sacroiliac joint to lock in place first, and then you can move on your pelvis, on your femurs, to go down into forward bending. So you wouldn't want to do that while you're counter-nutated. That's when you turn into that lady who's like grabbing her back coming up, pretty sure.
And that's what you said in class too. You wouldn't want someone just to be like, all right, I'm gonna wake right up and do my exercises. Like this is also somewhere you want their body to like get in a good position. I mean, like 'cause as you're just getting up from seated or from supine to standing, like all of this is like just adjusting.
That was a good tie-in to bringing everything together. I like that. This is more of like a passive process, so you're just getting up from point A to point B. It's just going to kind of happen.
Okay.
The other part I was worried about was the swelling in the discs.
That's right.
The extra swelling kind of just pushing on that herniation. And if a person has a herniated disc and they start doing a whole lot of flexion, what direction does their disc move in, the nucleus? And that's the direction posterior lateral is where most herniations occur in. So that disc is going to be swollen, they have extra fluid, and they start doing crunches or sit-ups for whatever reason. If they're still doing those, it's going to just send that nucleus, that swollen nucleus, really pushing into the herniated region that's weak, and make it even weaker, injure it even more, and agitate the person's back. Or the ever popular, I don't know, did you guys, what did you do fundamentals, yes? Patient transfers, yes? All right, so how do you guys get a person out of bed?
Like helping them say, like, if,
Someone lie down on the bed.
what if it's empty and like, what's there?
What motion is limited?
Come on, Ellie, come on, come on, lie down, all you have to do is lie down.
This is supine to sideline,
Yes, let's go.
shift your legs and stuff.
So you're lying down, this is your patient, you're like, okay, come on, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna put you on some ice.
So then I'm gonna go for to long sit, and then I'm gonna swing my legs over, and then come like this.
Is that what you guys learned?
That was one flow. We learned like
There's
different
multiple
flows.
ways.
Okay, what's the other methods?
I mean,
You
supine
swing
to
your legs
sideline would
over,
be better.
lay down, like.
You could do rolling also.
Swing and switch.
Go ahead.
So
Oh,
this
I'll
is
do
like,
the.
bring it out over here.
Okay, I feel like that one was more like if they didn't have, listen, that would be like if they didn't have any upper extremity, like, yeah, discrepancies. But then the other one, right, because the other one was you have them here, you roll to your side, then you do legs. Or, yeah, I'm pretty sure we did it from sideline and then legs, and then, yeah, pressing, that seems right.
Is that what we learned?
Yeah.
All right, lie down, on your back. Show you a bit more of this. I spent half my day telling people how to do this. Because like the average person, just do like a crunch sit up, like, all right, come on, let's go have some ice. This is how they get up out of bed. You can lie back down, Taylor. So what happens when they do that? They just woke up in the morning, they're swollen, their discs are full, they're more than likely here for a bulging or herniated disc. What did they just do? Lumbar flexion, under a lot of compression because they lift their body weight up. What happened to that disc that's already unhappy? Yeah, like right into the herniation. So that's the very first thing they did was hurt themselves in the morning, waking up, and they just start their day up on a bad note as it is. Slide over to the side a little bit more, Taylor.
Okay.
So this is how we do it in a hospital for getting the people that had the spinal fusions out of bed. You want to talk about some cranky people in the morning? Goodness, they are in pain. So we do a slightly different method, at least I do. So I always have one leg bent, that's big legs bent, and this leg is straight. What you're going to do, I tell the person, is to use this leg. You're going to push into the table with this foot. At the same time, use this arm, and you reach over. So push and reach at the same time. So that's how we do it. When Taylor was doing it earlier, we were having a whole lot of spine rotation.
Oh, yeah,
Again,
you're
for
right.
someone who had a fusion or someone has a cranky back for a muscle strain or facet joint problems, rotating the spine is not going to be pretty as well. So she's just going to come over one unit and roll over onto the side. Voila. Now we go ahead and flex the knees like you guys were talking about. And you don't want to do one at a time. That's the tricky part. Like the patients will try to do one at a time. They will get stuck and they will be like, ow, I don't want to do this. This hurts more. And they're like, you didn't do it right. What you have to do is time it so that the legs come off and you push it in at the same time. So
Okay.
everything comes up as you try to keep it as straight as you can.
So
It takes practice. You show this to someone, they're like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And it doesn't look anything like what you demonstrate to them. So it takes practice. You have to tell the person to practice to get up. And sitting down is the exact same reverse. You always want to move around. So now she practiced, and now she's getting better at keeping her spine in one unit versus
Makes
having
sense.
it bend and shear and wiggle around. And to get down to the side, you just go down on your side again, trying to
Same
flick
time.
your legs up. Yep. And then maybe you fall asleep there, maybe you don't. And then you just kind of push yourself over onto your back. So again, that is just tying everything in together. Fundamentals and this class. Now you don't want to do too much wiggling around of your spine. If you have a fusion, you definitely don't want to move around too much. Or if you just have like an acute strain, acute facet injury, or if you have a herniated or bulging disc, that's the best way of doing it. Unfortunately, it takes practice and coordination. It doesn't look that complex. It doesn't look that complex at all. But wait till you try to tell a person who's not the most coordinated to do it, and you'll be like, what happened? So
That's
what-
better than like a log roll, because the log roll you're like still like, you know, or some people say, because then you're still like I was doing, you're still letting like one part.
Yeah,
go
some
before.
people lead with one or the other. They'll like lead with their arm, or they will lead with their legs first. You really have to coach the person to bring both over at the same time and not to leave one back. Like in the hospital, the person will just freak out and they'll start to grab onto the bed rail and move their legs over. So you have to make sure that you tell them to not hold on to anything as well, just so they don't start twisting and rotating their spine. So always want to kind of keep everything in a nice straight line everything was counter-nutated, and hopefully it slips into some nutation unless the SI joint has a really problem or it's stuck. So that was how we get from, how did we even get onto that topic? So we were counter-nutated, we moved into slight nutation, and then for actual doing stuff, we want to really lock the SI joint out by nutating the sacrum. How does that happen? What is the description of that movement? Anyone want to take a stab at that?
Wait, what was the question?
Nutation of the sacrum, how would you describe it? Like what part of the sacrum is moving in what direction, what other part is moving in another direction? Alright, you got everything else right, let's go for it!
It's probably sacral prom. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, sacral promontory, yeah.
Anterior
And what other direction?
and inferior.
Yeah,
And then the other part is like near the apex, kind of. It moves posterior. And
The
superior.
apex, coccyx, yeah,
Yeah.
it moves what direction?
Posterior, superior.
So basically the opposite two directions. It's like a seesaw. Kind of just get the one direction down, you got the other back direction. And counter nutation, what is it? Anyone? Christina?
Promontory moves posterior and inferior, apex moves anterior.
We got 2 words. You're 2 words away from being totally right.
It moves anterior. Oh, you said counter?
Counter nutation.
Promontory, posterior, inferior.
Anterior.
So the promontory is gonna move. He's got the posterior part.
Inferior.
No, we moved inferior to go into nutation. So we moved down, like the pouring out of the bucket that Taylor likes to talk about. So yeah, it's gonna posterior, superior, and then the apex or the coccyx is just gonna kind of tug itself back to where it was. So that is gonna go anterior, and that is gonna go superior. All right? Superior, posterior. Yeah.
Wait, apex goes anterior, inferior.
So the promontory is going to go superior and posterior, and the apex is going to go anterior and inferior. So you just kind of have to like put the words in a mirror, and then there you go. You have the answer for the other movement.
Yes.
So you guys have that one down. Maybe I'll make it a little bit more complicated in one of my presentations. A little bit more, you'll get it. I think.
No complication.
So you guys got that SI joint? You're good? Yeah. All right.
Do you feel like as a clinician, it's hard to, I mean, like, is this, pretty prominent, SI issues?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's exhausting to try and work on it.
I almost wish you could teach the transplant class.
It is so tiring to work on SI joints. Oh man. I have 2 guys. Yeah, what did it look like?
They had like one knee bent and they were pushing,
Okay.
and then the other leg they were pushing out.
So that's like a muscle energy technique. That's what they'll call it. So you're trying to get the person's muscles to mobilize the bones in the direction that you want to go. So they'll definitely learn that out in the other class. I used to do that a whole ton. My forearm, so like bruised. Oh my goodness, from people trying to break it. And also I found that for me personally, I just did not get awesome success. So I've given up on it entirely now. I used to do it all the time. I had to come up with another solution for the SI joints that I have to deal with. So I do something else. But yeah, that's definitely very common, the muscle energy. But that's the tricky part when you learn about it, how to do it. You gotta be like, all right, it's going one direction, and I figured out what direction it is. Now I have to figure out which muscles I need to activate it to get it to go into the right direction. So when you're actually doing that in lab for that class, that's where things get really confusing. But you'll get it. You guys get it because you guys are very good at the muscles and what they do. And that's the key part of that whole thing. Any other questions about SI joints?
I have one more.
Yeah.
Can you just clarify the difference between the short and long arm? that you're-
Oh yeah, sure. I don't know if I might talk about it if they don't.
You talked about it in your.
I mean, a little bit more, possibly. You can't see it too well here, but right here in this circle, that right there is called the short arm of the sacrum. And then down here, this guy is called the long arm, chilling out down over here. So that's what they are called. And then you can kind of see where some of these movements come from, because it's weird. It's a very strange joint. This is what we need. A very strange joint. You're like, how does this flat thingy move kind of forwards and upwards? This is how it gets its forwards and upwards or downwards and backwards movement. And that in a short arm, it can go down, because that's kind of the way it is, vertical, up and down. And the long arm, it can move in another direction as it slides and moves around, so it can go posterior. So that's just kind of how this weird joint can kind of produce this ultra kind of complicated two-directional movement, which should kind of only just produce like up-down sort of movements. It's all coming from these two arms that you will find within the joint. So that is, that's that. I don't know what else we might talk about later on. Good. Any other SI questions? See when we fix one? No. You guys have some foot
Just while
problems
we're
or some
sitting
SI
here,
joint problems?
For the hips, just while we're sitting here, from closed chain extension, posterior roll, posterior slide.
Oh, which thing?
Of your, sorry, acetabulofemoral, acetabulofemoral. We just all,
It's
I don't-
posterior spin.
yeah, it's a
Yes.
posterior spin,
But
closed
not
chain.
It's an
And that's
anterior
it?
spin.
It is, for
For
closed
going
chain.
up?
Yeah, for
For
extension.
coming up, we're going to go into hip extension. What direction spin do you produce for hip extension?
Yeah, okay, the anterior
And
spin.
notice that the
Really?
spins are kind of like, I don't care if it's closed or
Right,
open.
because if you're going
I'm just
up,
going to keep on spinning the direction I need to spin it. So you just have to kind of realize that that's the tricky part. Like from here to here, it's kind of hard to see hip extension. This you're like, heck yeah, that's hip extension all day long. But this movement is kind of tricky to see that the hips are extending. So I think that's what you're getting thrown off. Because you're like, hip extension looks like this. And this movement right here doesn't look
Agreed.
anything like hip extension that you know about. So
So closed chain is an anterior spin, 'cause yeah, open chain is so open chain is definitely anterior spin, anterior slide.
yeah.
So then closed chain is also, even though both
Yep. The
so
spin
it's just
is,
same.
just keep on spinning.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
uh-huh. Nick, what's up?
So
If you want.
open chain and closed chain hip extension is the same spin?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, uh-huh. So the spins just kind of hold together. Now, I'm going to definitely go and revisit the whole pelvis. So for squatting, hopefully after the posture thing, because the posture isn't not terribly long. Because you guys already had a posture thing. So I don't want to go repeating stuff. So I'm going to talk about like what's going on here at the pelvis more in detail with squats after the test and lecture. Just because it's
Sorry, I just like, I go in circle, I don't know about anyone else, but like, oh, doesn't matter. I just go in circles.
What's up? Nick still has one more thought, and then I'll
Okay,
get you.
so for a closed chain squat, when you're going down, which is hip flexion, isn't
Yeah.
that an anterior pelvic tilt?
That's what I'm going to talk about in the other presentation.
I was talking about the bone, I was
Because
talking
that's
about.
where you guys got lost, definitely. If you look at the test, I kind of, like, I never set anyone up to be bad because I never asked that sort of question on the test. Just because I know it's confusing and complicated. I just like, you know, I'm going to talk about it. They have enough to worry about. And on the test, before this whole, like, thing happened, where I had to send out that email, like, the test was already written before that. I knew I wasn't going to go in there and ask that sort of question because it definitely deserves, like, a detailed conversation. So we'll talk about that after the test. You guys will be, like, awesome at analyzing squats, and I'll bring up why that's important, too. So hold on. I will answer that, and just know that I really won't go into that sort of question on this exam either. For the final, that's where that question is going to be coming up, and you'll be ready for it then. Emily, the finally gets to ask a question.
No, I was gonna ask
Oh.
one off of that, but you just answered it.
Okay, never mind then. Yes, Sandra has a
This
question.
may be a stupid question, but I thought with closed chain we were only looking at the pelvis, and that's why I was just thinking, for instance, when you're standing back up, I was just thinking posterior spin, but I'm thinking more so acetabulum.
Yeah, so that's what I'm definitely going to go over with the squats.
Oh, okay.
To really, I'm going to go from like the foot. We're going to review everything from the foot to the ankle to the knee to the hip, then to the pelvis on the hip. So we definitely want to define those terms. So we have the hip moving around, the femur moving around. Let's just call it the hip. So the femur moving around, the pelvis moving around. Got to talk about the sacroiliac joint moving around. Then talk about the lumbar spine moving around. And it gets a bit more complicated than what you can get out of these notes here. And I just like to go things simple, one step at a time. And on the test, I know they're hard as anything. I never really break that. I will just go after what I know you're supposed to get out of those lectures. So that's why I don't ask those weird questions. I try to keep it honest, but they are hard tests. I know that. I know you guys don't like them too much. Any other questions, test taking tips, or anything
Thank
else?
you.
What do got,
Oh,
Christine?
like when you go into a squat, do you anterior tilt first?
That's what I want to talk about in the other
Yeah,
thing.
sorry, we can't help ourselves, sorry.
That's what's confusing.
No, because I messed up on the
So
exam,
just
like
think,
the
don't
one
even worry
from
about
this
tilting
for some
things.
reason.
Oh, that was the
I know that
stand
we're all-
thing.
Yeah, that one I
Yeah.
put anterior tilt by accident. But I don't know, it's just
Me
confusing.
too.
I don't know.
That's what I'm trying to like get organized for that. But you got that one wrong.
I messed up. I don't know. I was like,
You definitely- if you messed
I
up-
did I thought it like I said posterior tilt.
Yes.
Pneumatics.
because I went over that in muscle mechanics lecture number 2, the webinar.
Yeah.
The whole sit to stand thing, the whole anterior tilt puts the glutes on tension. Like Dave commented in the webinar brilliantly, like perfect timing, is like it loads the glutes.
Dave.
And like that is awesome because that's kind of what you need. If we had Dave here, it would be awesome because he's a power lifter. So you can learn a lot from those guys at times. But they will be able to tell you how, yeah, I need my glutes to be engaged as I go down. And we'll put this on the test, but since you guys keep asking a question, would the glutes be loaded with posterior pelvic tilt? No. So they would lose their glutes. They wouldn't want to lift the heavy weight if they're in posterior pelvic tilt. If they were totally level, would their glutes be really working totally well? Not too much. So they would want to kind of just that little tilt, and I will give.
That would be like that
And,
optimal length.
Optimal length.
Yes, there you go. Optimal length, because now you're going down, you're in optimal length. You're working well going down for eccentric, working well coming out for concentric, and that is how you're going to do it safely. Breaking that is where you're going to get hurt and get injured. Like I said, I'm going to like totally nail that, I hope, in the presentation. We'll see what happens. I have the draft. I don't make the slides. I know how to do it. Any other questions on SI, or should we go to muscles?